Everybody. I am happy to see you all here today because today we're going to kind of have a general overview of finding your fiction voice. So for those of you ready to get started on writing fiction and not knowing where to start, you found a great place. Let's get started with slide 1. So finding inspiration. That can possibly be one of the biggest challenges, especially if you're encountering writer's block. So start with prompts to kickstart your creativity. There's a ton of different books out there that are great for exploring how you can break writer's block. I have several of them. Go on to Amazon and do some writer's block checks for books out there or writing prompts for free on the internet. Tons of different things. And then, of course, in all my videos, I have different prompts to kickstart your creativity as well. Most of the videos in this video class that I am offering to you all is going to have a lot of different techniques for you to get started. Explore those different prompts. Not every one that you read or see or practice is going to resonate with you, but keep practicing. Choose one that actually does resonate with you. And just because it doesn't resonate with you today doesn't mean it won't tomorrow. So don't throw it away forever. Just put it away for now and come back to it another time. Another thing I would encourage you to do is writers observe the world around them for inspiration. So do the same yourself. It can be as simple as getting on the bus or in the car and taking a car ride, seeing something that you feel like there's a story in that image, or there's a story in that scene, or there's a story in whatever you witness that you can really evolve on. One of the things I really enjoy doing is going to thrift stores or consignment, partially because I'm a shopping addict, but also because in those odd trinkets that you're not going to find at your everyday franchise, not real estate, but retail store is going to give you a ton of different places for you to begin your imagination journey. So find inspiration in the cracks and corners of your day-to-day existence. I promise you they're there. And combine that real-life experience with imaginative twists. Some of you are going to have a much more supernatural style than others, and that's okay. And those of you who have a really natural, very concrete style, this is going to be a great way for you to practice too. It's just seeing what the world presents to you on a day-to-day basis and seeing if there's a story in that. Characters are going to be one of the places that you're going to find a lot of inspiration. So you can get started just creating a detailed profile for your character. You don't have to start writing at all. Just sit down and begin to kind of review your characters. What is their background? What are their fears? What are they driven by? What are they motivated by? And what is their quirkiness? And I really believe that quirks make all of us interesting as human beings. So don't avoid that when it comes to your characters. Maybe your character always wears a particular item, or always has a particular turn of phrase, or maybe has a particular action that is repeated and is kind of quirky. So explore that, write about that. Take time to just write about that character, not even thinking about presenting that as part of a story, but making that your motivation for a story later on. I have a whole notebook full of different characters, and so I hope that you start to collect characters yourself. I can meet somebody on a trip, I can meet somebody in an office and be like, wow, that would be a great story character for me. Dialogue is really challenging, and that's something that you need to practice with too. So a lot of times when you're doing that profile for your character, write down a couple phrases that they might say, write down kind of their vernacular that they have. Each character should have a distinct voice, and the best time to find that voice can be when you are inspired to create them. So really don't avoid dialogue. It's such a difficult part of writing that I don't want you to wait until you get started writing in your story. Do that when you're creating that character yourself. It's a way to make that character come alive for you now. And remember, it can always change. It doesn't have to stay exactly how you write it down the first time. I also want you to start to think about building your world for those characters, and you can do those separately. So maybe one day when you have writer's block, you're just going to write about a character, pull from a person that you look out the window and see and write their story. Another thing I would like you to do instead of the character that we talked about is just sit down and establish a time and place for any story, not a particular story you want to write, but where in the world might you want to make this story happen. I would encourage you to only make times and places that you're familiar with. Even if that's a fantasy place, make sure that you're very familiar with it. Have a lot of vivid details in creating that setting. And the more unfamiliar you are, the more time you're going to have to take in doing this initial setting of the scene. Otherwise, it's really easy to make mistakes as a writer, and you're going to notice that. Your readers are going to notice that because they're going to love the things that you do and want to hear more from you. Initially, I hadn't thought about talking about this, but the more that you become a seasoned writer, the more you're going to want to also incorporate cultural, historical, and fantastical aspects. So you can play and create unique elements to make your world captivating. It doesn't have to be exactly as your world is right now. You can create little twists, create your own culture, create your own history, create your own fantastical element to that. If you watch my very first video in this grouping, looking at how the 8 main texts that I encourage writers to read just to get some great tools to make their writing last, being a writing piece that readers are going to come back to again and again, is that they have really interesting culture, really interesting history, really interesting supernatural versus natural understandings. That is what grabs humans, and that is what keeps humans coming back for more, wanting to know more about what you have to say. I also want you to think about the plot. So if we talk about what we've gone through so far, characters are really important. Setting the scene and the world, the craft of plot creation is an equally important skill to start to play with. So if you don't want to talk about characters during writer block, you really don't feel like you're interested in setting the scene or talking about a particular place or time that you want a story or a poem or whatever your genre is to take place in, sit back and start to craft a compelling plot line. This is complicated, so you cannot overdo plot lines. Sit down and just do a basic outline. You can use bubble.us online, which I think is a great tool for kind of mind mapping what the story's arc might look like, and creating bubbles on that mind map that are the key plot points or the key climax point, or the resolution, or a foreshadowing. All of those are different elements to kind of make an outline for a story's shape. Conflict and resolution are how you are going to drive your narrative at first to keep that reader coming back for more, and then a resolution that satisfies the reader. Now, certainly there are different styles of writing. You don't always have to have a happy ending, certainly, but what kind of reader are you trying to get, and what kind of need does your reader have? Readers need some kind of resolution. It doesn't have to be the ending that is the Disney ending, but it does have to be an intentional resolution to that story. Even the stories that are breaks, for example, Hunger Games, a film that many of you probably watched in your middle school years, are going to be those films. They broke a book in half so that they could probably monetize more, but also have as much of that story as possible by having it be 2 separate films. They still tried to resolve that first film while leaving it a bit of a tantalizing tease so that the audience came back for the second. Nevertheless, there was a bit of a resolution. So being intentional, being thoughtful is a part of the pragmatic element of writing. And remember, we are writers who are appeasing our readers to some extent. You and the reader are in a dance. You are members of a team. You can be the team captain, but you still have to get your team on board to go the direction that you want them to go. So don't forget your reader. The number one thing that we started out all of this video series with is believe that your reader is intelligent, believe that your reader is curious, believe that your reader is worthy of being a co-creator with you. So some of the writing techniques that we can begin to incorporate is to show, not tell. You've heard that many, many times before if you've been writing for any length of time. So using descriptive language to immerse readers into a story is very important. We're not going to say that the stove is smoking. You're going to describe this heavy, thick particles in the air that clog their lungs as the characters cough to get out of the room, whatever you want to say. But again, we're showing, we're not telling, we are helping the reader experience as much as possible. Pacing and tension is important. Again, that's going to go back to your style, but experiment with that pacing. How are you going to get that reader to continue to be engaged with you? That means build tension at key points in your narrative. So go back to that outline for your plot and start to make maybe a colored outline for those bubbles that say, this is where my narrative has a tension point. This is where my narrative has a tension point. If you don't have any place where you can really identify it as the writer that is a key point, then you probably need more tension points in your narrative, because that is key to keeping your reader, your audience engaged. Overcoming writer's block, we've talked about that. Go back and start to collect different prompts to get you writing. Free writing will do that. Doing all of these techniques that we've talked about, just writing about a character, just writing about a world that you want to start, just writing about a plot, are all different ways to get you started writing. But you have to have a time to write. You have to have a dedicated 10 minutes even. I would encourage more. I would encourage you to try to write 1,000 words a day, which is a lot. But if you don't want to write to a word count, write to a timed amount. So set a timer and write without constraint. Just get started. It doesn't have to be great to get started, but you do need to get started to become great. So don't let any sort of perfection slow you down. Also, you need to start to think about changing your perspectives when you want to overcome writer's block. So maybe you've been writing it from your protagonist point of view. Maybe switch it, make it antagonist point of view, or make it an omnipotent point of view. And how much are we going to trust that omnipotent narrator? Is that omnipotent narrator a hero? Is it somebody who has died within the world that you have created? Or is it a character that will be introduced to some extent in your piece? It could also be a god that is talking about it, some divine voice. You get to decide. You get to help understand how you're going to tell this story. And changing perspective is a great way to overcome writer's block and see a new way to look at the story, look at your craft, and really begin to see how you can move on from that block that you're experiencing. And break your routine to stimulate creativity. So maybe you do have a set time. Every day at noon, you're going to do a half an hour of writing, and you sit down and there's just nothing that's coming, no matter how many prompts you put in front of yourself. So go out, take a walk, experience life. Writers live in the world. They do not live in caves. So the more you can go out and have a writer's mindset to or perspective to experiencing life, the better your writing is going to be. Finally, and this is the last thing I'm going to say today, so it's a short video, but I want you to start, as long as you already have a routine. I don't say this if you don't have a routine, but if you have a routine, take a break before you start revising. You really should not have a creative session immediately followed by a revising session, you need to walk away. That allows you to get a fresh perspective on your writing. Likewise, share with your peers. The best thing I can give you in terms of being a writer is find a community. And that's a creator of any kind, whether that's creating YouTube videos or teaching or writing or creating music. Share your work with peers for constructive feedback and do the same for them. Consider their suggestions for improvement. Even the writer, and again, writers must, this is the number one thing, you must trust that your readers are wonderful people that you are excited about taking into that creative experience with you. So that means consider every reader's suggestion for improvement. They don't have to be the best audience member out there, but they are one of your audience members if they're sitting down to read your work. And they will have suggestions for improvement. You don't have to take word for word and do for sure. You don't have to take my word for word. You don't have to take your editor's word for word, but you do need to consider that suggestion. Be open, be humble, and don't be afraid to allow your creative work to be crafted. And the best way to do that is step one, take a break, step away from your work before revising. In conclusion, congratulations on taking the first steps in your fiction writing journey. Remember, writing is a process of exploring and growing. So embrace the joy of storytelling and let your imagination soar. Happy writing and happy editing. Writing is hard. We're going to help you have it be less hard.